$300,000 is the grand prize. Why don't we see that in more sports? Why aren't there other organizations that can do that kind of stuff? $300,000 would bring the best fighters from everywhere.
Well, I think it's a matter of, do you have the cash to do it, right? And in fighting sports, I think in the past, and let's take MMA maybe a bit out of it. Obviously, there's plenty of money in it now from UFC, but I think it's been people have struggled to really make events and make an organization be profitable and successful. So I think that's probably the problem, that there have been the lack of funding. And if you compare them with other sports, whether it's golf, tennis, and whatever, a $300,000 tournament in those sports, it's a very small event, right? A tennis player, the top tennis players wouldn't even show up at a $300,000 tennis tournament. So why is it big money in kickboxing or in other fighting sports? Is because the money hasn't been in there. Why has the money not been in there? It's simple. There hasn't been enough television support, sponsorship, and other funding in place to make those events happen and to pay that sort of money out. We believe in Glory that what we're building here is a sustainable business model which will generate the revenue streams across the board to be able to pay those sort of monies, and hopefully even more. Because as I said, my last 15-20 years of my career have not been necessarily just in the fighting world, but it's really been in many other sports. So I've been involved with developing sports, developing leagues, developing revenue streams, and I see how much money exists in other sports every day, from television rights deals to others. And kickboxing or any other form of martial art, really outside of, let's say, what UFC have done now, has been struggling for many years to get enough cash in there, and hopefully that will be time. It's time to change.
Here's what blows my mind about Glory as compared to other organizations. There is a show in December, as you well know, that has the most ridiculous lineup, I think, of fighters I've seen in a long time. How difficult is it as an organization to put together an event with that kind of star power?
Well, funny enough, it wasn't even that hard, because I think what everyone has realized, once K1 disappeared, and I don't know how much you know about the background. Actually, we tried to buy K1 originally. That was the original plan. We were trying to buy the brand because we felt, as a brand, it had a good, there was plenty of equity behind it. That didn't work out, and basically the guy who now owns it kind of, screwed us in the process. So what we decided, on the other hand, is to take the money which we had allocated to buy K1 and pretty much buy all the associate brands around it who actually controlled the fighters. So we bought Golden Glory, which had a host of fighters. We bought It's Showtime, which had another set of fighters. So by doing that, we started to pretty much control the talent side of the business. That was step one to the puzzle, really. That the minute we did that, we had a critical mass in terms of fighters, which, as you said, otherwise would be very difficult to get. The minute we had some of those guys under contract, our phones started ringing off the hook from every other manager in the world, saying, "Hey, I start to realize that you guys are the big boys in town now, and I have a fighter, or my fighter wants to be part of it." The part where it gets really funny here is that K1 claims that their next big event is $1 million tournament. i.e. they were supposed to pay $1 million for the guy to win. The funny thing is no one believes that. So all our guys are signed up with us. That tournament which you're referring to in Tokyo is our Grand Slam. And the prize money there is $400,000 US, which again is a lot of money, but it's not $1 million. But why are people signing up with us? Because no one believes that K1 will pay that $1 million. So it's all nice and good to claim we're going to pay this and that and the other. They haven't paid anyone for a long time, and they have, shown a lot of bad faith with fighters over the years. So I think a lot of the fighters have lost, faith in these guys. So what we're doing is the opposite. We're paying things up front. We've paid old debt for fighters, which actually was outstanding by K1. We paid a lot of that money up right at the beginning to basically get those guys out of a tight spot. Because if you're a fighter and you haven't been paid for a couple of years, you're starting to run out of cash normally pretty quickly. So we did a lot of things to build goodwill, to show that, look guys, when you sign with us, this is not the same, bullshit which you're getting from K1. This is the real deal. We have the money. We're building a solid association or company here, and we want you to be part of it. And that word spreads pretty fast.
How big in terms of attendance are you expecting December to be? Are we talking like Pride FC attendance? Because I would think so.
Yeah, we have, the arena is scalable, so we're since we're coming in really, new and fresh, we want to make sure we are covering the sort of ends a bit. But the scaling is from 10,000 up to 15,000 basically. So that's our own, and our expectation is to fill it up. But we can also scale it down a little bit. At 10,000, it'd still be a nice big arena, obviously.
Well, here's an interesting question. If someone told you, that you are competition for the UFC, especially when you are completely different than the UFC in the market, the way it's being marketed, it seems like the prize money being put up, like the business model's different. So if someone said, hey, you guys are competition for the UFC, is that a compliment to you?
If anyone puts us on a level where UFC is now, of course it's, we take that as a compliment. Happy to take it. At the same time, also, we would say that, we are not competing with them. Yeah, I mean, as I said, eventually I think we're probably going to compete for a certain talent. Fighters will pick and choose what they feel is they're better at. Some guys are just better at just, kicking and striking in a stand-up fight and style, and others, prefer obviously the sort of all-round, combat which UFC is all about. Where I think we're different is really, we will not have the same problems UFC has on the broadcasting front. We will have, around the world, our sport will be seen as a cleaner form of combat sport. The part of the problem UFC has and will continue to have around the world is that it is just something which looks on television, much more brutal and obviously less regulated than what we are. And so I think our sport has, in theory, not in theory, I think we'll show it very quickly, a wider range and a wider audience, especially on regular television. UFC obviously has done a great job in certain parts of the world to penetrate, terrestrial TV and also other basic television. But in most parts of the world, they are, on very niche channels. They are on, cable channels and other platforms to kind of keep it almost away from the general audience. But, the niche audience can find it. And that is just because what it is as a content, and that's where I think we're different, and we will not face that issue, and we haven't faced that issue. we're any broadcast in the world who shows boxing can show our show. They will not necessarily touch UFC, obviously.
The comparison doesn't seem to be with the UFC or Strikeforce. It seems to be with, like you were talking about, the places that you'll be able to be broadcast are just completely outnumber anything that any mixed martial arts organization has access to right now.
Absolutely. That's I mean, our company, the company I've been running for the last 15 years, that's what we do all day long is television business. So we clearly looked at that, and we felt there is a space we can be in, and if I describe it to someone, I would always say you have traditional boxing on the left of the spectrum, and you have WWE wrestling on the complete opposite right of the spectrum. Bit more than sort of in the center portion of it is your UFC side of it, and would be on the other center side of it, more leaning towards the boxing world. So that's sort of, in terms of positioning, probably where we are. We are in our own space. We think we are more exciting than traditional boxing because of the additional elements we have.
Last question. You guys are obviously growing and moving fast. What can we expect, say, in the next 6 months from Glory?
Well, I think in the next 6 months, and I would go even a bit further than that. In the next 18 months, which means the rest of this year and the sort of all of next year, you will see that Glory will become the most dominant, stand-up fighting league on the planet, and it will be known not just in certain pockets where the sport maybe has a following right now, like in Japan or certain parts of Europe, but we will be, by the end of next year, every fight fan in the US will know us. That, I think, is my promise. The other side of it, obviously, is that we are rolling into the different markets in different levels. In Japan, which obviously has a large history, we're rolling in with a huge event right at the start. Our show in December is the biggest show we have. We call it Grand Slam for a reason. We're throwing a lot of money at it, and as you said, we're throwing the biggest talent there is at this. We have different strategies for other markets. US, we will roll in much more gradually. We are about to we close a pretty smart television deal in the country, which will give us some nice leverage as well. And we come in actually with smaller events, which we call Road to Glory. The whole point of it is that we want to start building up some of the momentum from the grassroots level up. We want to identify American fighters and give them a chance to get to glory. So there's a road to it, and you got to travel that road first. So we have some events which will be smaller and basically just to identify, stand-up fighting talent in the country, which then will get a chance at the big league. So very different strategies, very different approaches, and we're doing this on purpose because we feel different markets need different elements to it. So, if you look at the UFC, who really build up their business model from the US only point of view, we're creating a business model which pretty much from the get-go is a global operation. We have an office in Holland and in London. We have an office here in Kuala Lumpur. We will have an office very soon in Japan, as well as we're setting an office up in the US. So we've gone, we're doing this at a different route and a different speed than maybe most other federation or companies or organization have ever done. and I think we can do it because we have that expertise, we have that global reach in from the start. But it also creates challenges. But we're pretty confident that in the next 12 to 18 months here, we will build a platform where every fighter on the planet who wants, who fights our style of sport or would consider it, will want to be part of, because he will see that is where the pinnacle of the sport is. That's why we call ourselves the World Cup of kickboxing, or the Premier League of kickboxing, because that is what we are. We are the number one. We are, maybe in American terms, we are the NBA of kickboxing, where the best talent in the world comes together and showcases its space. So that's what we're all about, and we have a very detailed business plan across the world, which we're rolling out. We have the funding behind it, and now it's just about executing, basically.